know, I was really taken by it. And I spent 2 years drifting to that house every weekend. But I wasn't alone. A lot of people went, because imagine 5 kids with their respective friends, mother and daughter and their friends. We were always 30 or 40 in that house. And one day, that house was shut down. We arrived there and we couldn't get in. And I realized that, you know, the world would never be exactly the same from that moment on. You know, it was as if that whole, I realized that for that family to live in that, with that degree of intensity, was a form of resistance under the military regime. You know, and this is what was robbed. The family was robbed of that light, and as the country was robbed of a future at the exact same time.
I want to talk about that house, but I first want to talk about, you said that in your home, that wasn't the case. Is that because of the reality outside the home, that your home was different?
Well, my parents were from the interior of Brazil, from Minas Gerais, you know. And there was this, I would say, this division between generations, very clearly. But in this house here, perhaps because they were 5 kids, you know, there were no barriers, you know. There was a freedom of expression was there all the time. It was very polyphonic, you know. It was almost tactile, and I tried to bring that into the film. You know, that was a house where you felt invited to be part of, and I somehow, in doing the film and adapting the extraordinary book by Marcelo Rubens Paiva, the second youngest kid of the family, I really tried to, as a filmmaker, to extend the invitation to the audience, to all of you, to kind of feel what I felt, you know? Because that house was another country. This is what it was.
What I love about the structure of the film is that there's fully, I didn't quite time it to the moment, but it's almost 45 minutes, I believe, where we're in that home before the inciting incident happens, which allows you, it's not just one scene, it's not 15 minutes before it all changes. You let us spend some film's length in that home first, and that must have been, from the beginning, the plan, to make sure that this was not just, that wasn't just set up.
You know, this is why it took us 7 years to shoot. Because it took a long time to have the screenplay right, as you can imagine. Because you have to really make every single one of those characters as special as they were for me in my memory. You know, they had to exist. So the first act of the film, you know, this luminous part of the film defies all the you know, everybody who wrote about screenplays would find this not too long, but the exact opposite of what should happen, because there's nothing happened on minute 3, minute 5, minute 9, and yet I think that since the very beginning, since the first image, you have a woman in the sea, and then there's a military helicopter flying too low. So in a way, that image encapsulates the film as a whole already in the very first image. So I don't know how to say this in English, but the beginning of the film is really about o estar no mundo of that family, the beingness in the world, the way they were in the world, you know. And I think it's only by understanding what was lost that you can deal with grief, and you also understand the magnitude of loss, you know. So it was very important to structure it as we did structure.
I'm curious to hear from both of you in terms of that house. What was it? I mean, how did you achieve that level of beingness, of placeness, of presence? Was it a house that you worked a lot in advance of the filming? Was it also? I'm curious about the way that you shot it. Was there a freedom of movement in the house as well?
First, I think Walter, he found this house and the film had to be postponed. And he kept the house because he said, without this house, we don't have a movie, we don't have a film. So the house was there, and every day I remember getting my car and driving. It was like time traveling, because that house looked like my house in the 70s. I could be one of those children. And we were living in that house. And Carlo Conti, the amazing set designer, he didn't prepare a set, he prepared a house. He was every day like extinguishing cigarettes in the ashtray. So the house had the smell of a house at the time that everybody smoked. And the kitchen smelled like garlic. And we had like what, 1 month living there and rehearsing scenes that were cut from the movie. But we could like just by the pleasure of playing with it. The children, they were like invited to do their own rooms. So that was pretty much our home.
Yeah, we tried to create texture and memories in that house, you know, and by rehearsing, I would say, what would have preceded the beginning of the film, without a camera, we just played with those scenes. It allowed us to actually create relationships that would, you know, that really had the grain and the texture that we needed for the family to truly exist. And then to answer your question about the fluidity of the grammar at the beginning of the film is pretty much influenced by the memory I had of that house. You know, so the camera is very agile and it goes from one group to the other, because this is how I felt, you know, from that place. And as we shot in chronological order, which is fundamental with kids, so the kids were not, they only knew what was going to happen in that specific day, you know, and we went from that, for that spontaneity at the beginning of the film, but also I would say we went for that spontaneity in almost every shot. We changed something in the dialogue or movement to make every single take a complete unique take. It was not take two, it was something new.
And also when I remember the party for me in the beginning is like the peak of the being in that house. And all those actors, they are our friends. Celton is my great friend. So we were really partying. And the kids, they've never been in a movie experience. And they were having this amazing experience of creating another life. So it was really, there is one scene, the journalist that tells me that Rubens is dead. In the beginning, he's a close friend, and I said, oh, Eunice has a crush on him. And then I was like playing with him, and this is in the movie. I'm like smiling at him, and Celton takes me and said, no, 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 no. And this was our way of being in that house. It was good.
What did that offer you as an actor? Because not all films offer that for you, in terms of being able to both film in sequence, but also have that level of care for a space. What extra does that give you?
It's more than care for space. I remember when I saw this film for the first time, I was a bit in shock because we didn't look like we were acting. And this is something very difficult to achieve, because normally you play, there is like this whole grammar for fiction. So we know how to cry, the director knows how to create tension, but not in this movie. This movie was pretty much close to a documentary grammar. It's not that it was improvised, no, but the documentary is in the soul of Walter. So he had this antenna when all the wardrobe or the shooting or the acting was fiction. And I never had the experience of being so real in my life, and this was really intense.
And is that different for you as well in terms of your process?
Yes, I think it was very much different from Central Station, for instance, where you sense that it's, you know, I would say the dramatic structure is more at play from the beginning to the end, and the acting also drifts from that. Here, you know, we were really searching for authenticity, and Celton says something very beautiful, is that the kids helped in that, because kids never lie on camera, you know, and they...
And dogs. We had both.
And that honesty is in being, you know, was something quite wonderful, and I think that kind of allowed us to have a more of a sensorial layer on the film going on, you know, and that allowed us to also capture things that were not in the screenplay to start with. Just one example, when they are leaving the house, the family is leaving the house at the very end of the first part, and the little girl is looking at the house being dismantled, and she's really moved by that. That is a stolen shot. We were actually shooting something else, and then I realized she was perceiving that, as you say, two things at the same time, is that as a character she's leaving that house, but also she's leaving the film as we're shooting chronologically.
That was the last day of her in that house, and she was watching the house being dismantled. So this parallel between our experience and also the character experience was there all the time.
Yeah. So yeah,
and the house was a character of the film, very much for us, but also the house represents the father that would never come back. If leaving the house is also leaving somehow the father behind. So that scene was so central to us, you know. And interestingly, it was shot so rapidly. Everything is a take one in that scene. Because what was of interest, what was what was happening à flor da pele, how do you say that? You know, really under the skin, as you were feeling it, you know? It was shot very rapidly. The Super 8 at the very end, we shot it once also, you know? It is what it is.
But I would like to add just one thing. I think it all happened because of someone called Eunice Paiva. Because this woman emanates this kind of truthfulness. I mean, she never lied. When you watch an interview by Eunice Paiva, she's clear, she's straight, she's like, she doesn't lie, she doesn't pretend she's crying or whatever. She's a hell of a human being, and we wanted to do something that she would be proud of and that would emanate her soul, and I think he did it.
did you feel a sense of burden of having to somehow carry her story on your shoulders and do right by her?
I didn't feel burdened, but I felt a big sense of responsibility, I think, because she never wanted to be known for what she did, and she did a lot of things. I mean, she became a lawyer at the age of 46 with 5 children, and she became a lawyer for the human rights. She was the one of, I think, of the first lawyers to defend indigenous rights, and she's responsible for indigenous reserves that nowadays are saving the Amazon forest, because all the land that became an indigenous reserve, the nature was saved. And so this woman, and she never wanted to be known. So I didn't feel burdened. I felt the responsibility that we should do something that she would be proud of.
The structure of the film also is such that we described that the first act and how polyphonic and joyous it is, and then the next 2 acts really do become, you know, Eunice's story from there, and you're carrying, your performance carries a lot of weight from there. And I'm interested in finding the right person that could do that could absorb all of what we see in the beginning, and that sense of exile, that sense of loss, and basically still be a living, thriving person. How did you come to this?
You know, I got to meet Eunice that part, you know, when I was 13, 14, and then I got to see her again at the end of her life. And there, what was really something that I never forget it is it was an emotional intelligence about this woman, you know. And there was always something kind of brewing inside of her, but never truly spilling, you know. And the whole role had to be about that, even when she discovers that the husband hadn't been a true confidant. And that she discovers in the first interrogation. Actually, she discovers many things in that scene, because she discovers she asked for a lawyer. The guy said, no lawyer. So she discovers what is the true nature of the dictatorship there in that specific moment. And then she discovers that the husband hasn't confided into what she did. So that it's a very large moral dilemma. So there's many things happening at the same time. And what Fernanda does in that scene really still strikes me, you know, because there's so many things happening at the same time, non-verbally, you know. And this is why I say she resisted that, but I call her a co-author of the film. Because only a co-author of the film could have been able to actually relay all the layers in a scene like this, where so much is said non-verbally, you know, and also carry almost the same moral dilemma that the husband had to carry, because she also omits things from the kids in order to protect them, but still, you know.
Yeah, nothing in Eunice is just one thing. That scene in prison, I mean, she feels betrayed, she feels anger, she feels angry, but at the same time she knows that the policeman is gonna use it against her husband, and so she wants to protect the husband. And since the beginning, Walter was telling me to restrain emotion, to do not show, to restrain. Then when she gets back to the bathroom scene, when she gets back from prison, she looks at herself and she starts a long, long journey of killing utopia. And this is so profound. I mean, someone who looks at herself and says, that world is over, and I will start to deal with what I have from now on. So it's so powerful. It's a woman that reinvents, or I think gives birth to herself during a tragic moment. And once I asked Marcelo if he thinks she would become herself without losing the great man, because she was raised to be the great woman of a great man. She was raised to be a housewife. And only through this tragedy, she becomes herself even more powerful than she used to be. And this journey for me was, because like you said in the beginning, she's an extra in the house. She serves coffee, she puts the children to sleep, but the man is the thing. And at the end, she's in charge, even in charge of terrible decisions like to do not tell the children what happened, in a way to save their innocence, I think. And in the other way, because it was unbearable to tell 5 children a horrible thing that happened. So she saves it from her to herself. I mean, she doesn't want this to herself, but at the same time, she doesn't want her children to lose innocence. Because to become a victim, this is beautiful that she says, we are not the victim, the country is a victim. So it's a hell of a woman.
I think we want to get a couple questions from the audience. We'll start that process now. Apologies for the strong lighting. Repeat the question. Go ahead, bring your question.
So when you talked to Marcelo, and he was giving you input, did he give input to both of you at the same time, or was it different moments that you got a chance to talk to him, and he gave you input about how the story was told and how he remembered it and then brought it out?
Marcello, the son who wrote the book,
Yes.
his feedback.
He was close to the whole process of developing the screenplay, so that took many years. So that work was concentrated in the 2 young, very talented screenwriters with whom we worked, and he was somebody that always weighed in whenever we were in doubt. But I have to say that during the shoot, sometimes we also had doubts and we resorted to him. I remember one day when we were shooting the moment where the military police in civilian clothes enter the house. The book doesn't fully describe the nature of the acting, how I would say how invasive or not they were, you know, and my first, because of all the images I had from previous films, you know, I had the impression that that entrance was more brutal to start with, and then when we shot it, something didn't feel completely right. So I phoned him and I said, Marcelo, I shot it like this and that, but how would you describe them? And I said, these guys wanted to be seen as accountants. Very strange accountants, yet accountants. So there was a pretension of being, I would say,
Normal.
yes, and
Yes,
yet
the
they weren't.
bureaucracy of this.
Yes, yeah, but bureaucrats of that, and to do something that was matter of fact, but then it wasn't. So we reshot that thanks to him. So he was very much near whenever we needed him, but he never interfered because he is not only a writer and an incredible artist, but he is himself a screenwriter, so he also knows the difference of that. And we also interviewed every one of his, we conducted extensive interviews with every one of the sisters and everyone who was still alive linked to that story. And this is why it took so long.
Was he okay with the fact that he wasn't the central character?
Yes. Yes, because you know, in writing the book, he discovered that his mother was, in fact, you know, the main heroine of the story. And in reconstructing his family's memory, he was offering a reflection of Brazil's memory during that time. How extraordinary was that? And he understood it, you know. And the film really embraced that discovery that he made by writing the book.
And the discovery was in the scene where she finally gets the death certificate. And he describes this in the movie, in the book, it is in the film. He looks at her and he said that it was the real heroine of the family. Because Eunice, first she was the widow of Rubens, and later she was the mother of Marcelo. And she always a secondary character.
Right here.
Another question. One of the topics of this film is obviously impunity. How do you see the issue of the amnesty law still prevailing in Brazil? The fact that your film, Walter, as well, brought this to the Supreme Court somehow to rediscuss the amnesty law. Does it make any sense to continue the amnesty law in Brazil?
Question about the amnesty law in Brazil.
That's very delicate. We had like a lesson with Celso de Barros, which is a great social, political thinker. The problem is that in Brazil, the dictatorship took 21 years to finish. And when they decided, the army decided that it was supposed to end, they were in charge. In Argentina, for instance, was the contrary. It was a very terrible dictatorship, but it lasted just 6 years.
6 or 7 years.
And they end up with the crazy Falkland War that totally destroyed the military. So they were able, the civil society was able to put them, to persecute them, but not in Brazil. So the only way for Brazil, and there was like a very extremist right-wing part of the army who didn't want it to happen. And those same people are now, recently, they were in power trying to do a coup d'etat. So what happened in Brazil is there was this arrangement. We pardon your side and you forget about what happened during the dictatorship. But this ghost comes to life again and came to life again. So it's very impressive that now the Supreme Court used the film to say that, wait a minute, when it disappears with the body, it's a crime that it's still happening. So it can't be part of the amnesty. We are starting to discuss it.
Yeah, I think that, to be direct, I think we fully stand by Onisi's position. The crimes of the military dictatorship should be judged and punished, full stop. You know, as they were in Argentina and as they were in Chile.
But the reason that it didn't happen in Brazil is that.
But this is also why coup d'etats are still being,
Yeah.
because had they been judged, there wouldn't be the temptation of another coup d'etat.
No, and it's the same people. The secretary of the very extremist general that didn't want the dictatorship to end, was now in the coup d'etat plan. It's unbelievable, the same people.
You said it was 7 years that it took to write the script and get here. Politically, things changed a lot in Brazil now, during that time.
Yes, I know.
So what was it like to work on this period film while these events were happening in the present?
It was actually fascinating because I think that when we started to do the project, I mean, the adaptation of Marcelo's book was brought the possibility to offer a reflection of an era that we hadn't fully investigated, I would say. And little by little, as the situation changed and the country veered to the extreme right, we understood that the film had a degree of urgency that had to do with our present and not only with our past. And that, I think, gave us a lot of focus, you know, and it kind of created a sense. The crew, people, you know, the actors on one hand and the crew said we were so I would say in tune because of this perception that we were doing a film about who we were at that time, but also about who we are, you know. There's this beautiful line about Andrei Tarkovsky, you know, a Soviet filmmaker whose work I love, and he says that a film starts to exist when everybody who is doing the film is in the same artery of a film. And when we perceived that the film was about the past, but also about the present, this is when we entered into the artery of the film.
But you know, there is a magic in this movie because I think that it would be impossible to release this movie 4 years ago. It was possible because of this window that we had, like the sense that perhaps democracy will be saved. And so in this window, this film happened, and it happened like in a very powerful way in Brazil, that people from all kinds of beliefs and political stands, they all agreed that this can't be. And it happened now. And it happened like, it created a kind of empathy for human beings again, something that we thought we had lost. So perhaps this film will help in the future for the next moment of our democracy, for our next choice. And I hope it does.
Questions here? Back here on the right.
Yep, you.
What did you both learn from this film?
What did you both learn from this film? Answer however you want.
We both.
The two of you.
Want to start? As we are in New York, I'm
You're
gonna.
better today than I am.
As we're in New York, I'm gonna resort to one of my heroes in music, Duke Ellington. He once was asked, what, you know, how does one become a musician? And he says, well, first thing, you have to listen to musicians all the time. And the second most important thing is to listen to yourself. And I would say that you know, in the years that we were preparing the film, I saw, I love going to cinemas, and I love to be in a museum of the moving image. So I did see a lot of films, but I also listened to, you know, the memory I had as an adolescent, you know, and so the film is pretty much the result of that encounter, you know. And there's something also beautiful that Duke Ellington says. It says that when you stop listening to other musicians, or when you stop listening to yourself, you're not into music anymore. So let's continue to be into cinema.
What I discovered, I thought after the pandemic, when everybody bought, I don't know, a home theater at home, that perhaps this kind of experience, the collective experience of cinema was over, that perhaps cinemas like these were only to superheroes movies and now not. It's true, I was going to cinemas just to have the amusement park experience with my children, but films, sensitive films like these were made to be watched at home. And with this film I discovered the power of the collectiveness in movies, that there is something going on here, but also, like theater, something going on with all of us. And another thing that I discover is the power of restraining in acting, of do not showing in everything, of acting within me. This Eunice changed me a lot.
Go ahead, Brandon.
I'm sorry, it's not a question actually, but I feel that I have to say that Fernanda, my dream always was always be actress from Brazil, and I never couldn't, and I'm living now in Europe for almost 2 years to follow this dream. I'm learning English and everything, and this is why you inspire. You inspire me. I love it. I love it. So you don't have to say nothing very such a pleasure here in front of you.
Go for it, girl.
Right here in a second.
Hi.
Yep.
First of all, thank you so much, and the movie it's amazing. And for you, Fernanda, we as a Brazilians, I'm sure everybody is very happy to have you, and I hope the Oscar will be yours as well. But she was not intimidated when they were doing the interview her and the family and the photo. What it was so important for her to show they were happy and smiling.
Why was it so important to have them smiling in that film in front of them?
It's the victim thing, because everybody wanted to portray them as victims, as people who were destroyed by the dictatorship. And I think she's a very intelligent woman. She discovered that by doing this, the dictatorship would have won. And she used her smile, I always say it, as a weapon. I mean, it's a way to tell the dictatorship that she's not broken. And Marcelo, it's amazing because it's a lesson that all of them took to their lives. Marcelo was in a wheelchair at the age of 20, and the first book he wrote, it was almost shocking that he kept his sense of humor, that his soul was there. And this is a lesson that this woman gave to this boy. So I think the smile, and it's funny because nowadays everybody's so angry. Everybody is like hating each other, and even if you are progressive, you are like, you hate other people. And it's true, isn't it? Everybody's hating everybody. And then Eunice I think she teaches us that to be civilized, polite, to be not soft, but gentle and persuasive with a smile is much more, much better than to fight in the same level of aggressiveness. I think that's what the smile is about.
Yes. Hi, Fernanda. Hi, Walter. First of all, congratulations. It's a great movie. I was born in the end of the 70s, and when I watched the movie, it send me back to the beginning of the 80s and everything. But my question is for you, Fernanda, when you finish the script and you turn the last page, how you feel about the script and the movie that you have to record in front of you? And second question is, when you got alone with your Golden Globe, what was your feelings?
Two questions. When you finished the script, what was your thought about doing
First,
this?
when I finished the script, he gave me, without telling me that he was thinking about me. So I read it just as a friend, and I was in awe with the quality. First, because I've read the book, and the book would be like 4 seasons with 10 chapters to tell the whole story. Sometimes we had a scene and he would say, no, this is for the streaming series. And I was in shock how the script was able to choose the right, como é que fala o corte? The right
Cut.
The right elliptical narrative quality.
narrative to tell the whole story, because it's a long story, a lot of years passes, but it was it was amazing. I cried and I was like moved like I am now with the movie. And so later he told me, but I remember the last day of shooting, which in a way is the last day of closing a page, really. And we shot in a very cold ocean, and I was like freezing. We all getting out, and I look at this guy, and we had the feeling that we have done something special. And also the cinematographer, during the shooting, one day he came to me, Tejido. He came to me and said, don't tell Walter that I showed you. Don't tell that yesterday they went to see the scene in the ice cream place when she like looked to the people and realized that life was not going to be the same. And he showed me that photograph that it's everywhere now. And he said like this, look. And his eyes, it was full of tears, and he told me, I think we are doing something special. So beautiful. So that was a moment. I never told you. And when I came back home with my husband Andrusha to our hotel, we are like laughing. The Golden Globe. I will tell you, it's tough this, because what happened is that next day we are living in a biblical apocalypse. So that was really strange, because we had that Hollywood night and in a very American night, because you get first, and this is very important. And for a Brazilian to get first is so rare.
Yeah.
And we were happy. And that week started with the fires, and like 3 days later, my husband in his underwear came to the room showing me the telephone and said, the telephone was making what? It's saying that we have to evacuate. And then I was like packing, and I had this silly thought. Should I grab the Golden Globe? But this is so silly. I mean, to be in the street in my pajamas with the Golden Globe. And I thought about the Golden Globe melting. And so I had this vanity moment, vain moment, I must tell. But then we didn't have time to celebrate, because everything is so terrible around.
Yeah, no, and we have, in this moment of collective mourning, really. We have so many friends that, lost their houses, lost memories, I know the area also well, because we edited the Motorcycle Diaries in Topanga Canyon, which is pretty much at the center of the tragedy, and there's so many people I admire, and so many people I became friends with who are, suffering this collective pain now. And so, I mean, our thoughts are definitely with them. And at the same time, you know, there's the fact that what we do can have a healing effect, you know, with literature, music, cinema, everything. It becomes important also to reconstruct, you know, to move on, you know. The film is in a way about this also because, you know, it's really about loss and how to overcome loss. And as Eunice did, you know, she taught us on how to overcome loss. And it's so life-affirming that you end up believing that even in moments like this, that you can pursue, you can go on, you know.
And
So this was a week about that, you know, all of that.
And we
Yes.
had like a screening in Ojai, and I was like, should we do it, Walter? And then Walter told me they really want us to do it. And was one of the most touching screenings that we had because everybody was like left their homes, and there was this film, in a way, they were so moved by this woman and this family that in tragedy survives and become even more stronger. So that was a really touching screen.
It's a film where the vivacity of life is up on screen, but it's also constantly in peril. It's threatened. And so I think that for us to be able to gather in a room like this and to see that and appreciate that and to see what it's like to survive beyond it is really important.
It's also about how fragile we are, isn't it? You know, how fragile we can be when there's no freedom, how fragile we are facing nature when nature is being attacked as it is by how do you say negationistas in English? By those that deny global warming and everything else.
Denials.
You know. So yeah, I think it's a good time to be together and to actually think about ways to go on and transcend the reality we have to face.
Thank you both for being with us.
Thank you so much.
today.
Thank you very much.
Obrigado.